Title: The Haunting of Deadwood Hollow. In the heart of the forest, where the trees whispered secrets and the shadows danced with unseen hands, stood Deadwood Hollow, a place shrouded in darkness and steeped in legend. For years, tales had been told of the restless spirits that haunted its ancient grounds, their mournful cries echoing through the night like a haunting refrain. Undeterred by the warnings, two young friends, Sarah and Matt, set out on a camping trip to Deadwood Hollow, eager to test their courage against the unknown. Armed with nothing but a tent and a flashlight, they ventured into the depths of the forest, the darkness closing in around them like a cloak of shadows. As they made camp at the edge of a clearing, Sarah and Matt laughed and joked, their voices breaking the silence of the night as they stoked the fire and roasted marshmallows over the flames. But as the hours passed and the fire burned low, a sense of unease began to settle over them, the forest around them growing eerily quiet as though holding its breath in anticipation. With a nervous laugh, Sarah suggested exploring the woods before bed, eager to test their bravery against the legends of Deadwood Hollow. Matt agreed, though his voice betrayed a hint of apprehension as they set out into the darkness, their footsteps echoing through the empty forest like a drumbeat of warning. As they wandered deeper into the woods, the air grew thick with an otherworldly energy, the sounds of the forest fading into a hushed silence that seemed to press in on them from all sides. With each step, Sarah and Matt felt as though they were being watched, unseen eyes following their every move from the shadows. Suddenly, Sarah's flashlight flickered and died, leaving them shrouded in darkness, with only the faint glow of the moon to guide their way. Panic rising in their chests, they fumbled for their phones, but to their horror, they found that they had no signal. They were completely cut off from the outside world. With a sinking feeling in the pit of their stomachs, Sarah and Matt pressed on, their hearts pounding in their chests as they navigated the maze of trees and underbrush. But just as they were about to turn back, they heard it, a faint whispering sound, like voices carried on the wind. Frozen in terror, they followed the sound to a clearing at the center of the forest, where they beheld a sight that chilled them to the bone. A group of shadowy figures, their forms obscured by darkness, gathered around a flickering fire. With a sinking feeling in the pit of their stomachs, Sarah and Matt realized that they had stumbled upon something far more sinister than they could have ever imagined. A gathering of the spirits that haunted Deadwood Hollow, their ghostly forms twisted and contorted with rage. As the figures turned to face them, their eyes burning with an otherworldly light, Sarah and Matt knew that they were in grave danger. With a scream, they turned and fled into the night, their footsteps echoing through the empty forest as they raced towards the safety of their camp. But as they reached the edge of the clearing, they heard a bone-chilling howl behind them, the sound reverberating through the darkness like a death knell. And then, with a sudden rush of movement, the shadows were upon them, their icy fingers wrapping around Sarah and Matt with a strength that defied logic. With one final, desperate cry for help, Sarah and Matt vanished into the darkness, their fate sealed by the spirits of Deadwood Hollow. And as the night closed in around them, the forest fell silent once more, the echoes of their screams lost in the void as though they had never been. Shelby was no stranger to burning the midnight oil in the office. As a dedicated worker, she often found herself alone in the dimly lit corridors of the building, her only company the soft hum of the fluorescent lights and the steady click-clack of her keyboard. But on this particular night, something was different. Something sinister lurked in the shadows, waiting to reveal itself to the unsuspecting Shelby. As the clock struck midnight, Shelby sat alone at her desk, the glow of her computer screen casting long shadows across the empty office. With a weary sigh, she rubbed her eyes and stretched her cramped muscles, the weight of exhaustion settling heavily on her shoulders. But just as she was about to call it a night, a movement caught her eye, a flicker of movement in the corner of the room, so faint that she almost dismissed it as a trick of the light. But as she peered into the darkness, Shelby's blood ran cold. There, standing in the shadows, was a figure. Heart pounding, Shelby watched in horror as the figure stepped forward into the dim light, its form twisted and contorted like a creature from a nightmare. Its eyes burned with an otherworldly light, and its mouth curled into a twisted grin that sent shivers down Shelby's spine. Frozen with fear, Shelby could only watch as the figure drew closer, its footsteps echoing through the empty office like a death knell. With each step, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy, the temperature dropping until Shelby could see her breath in the air before her. Desperate for escape, Shelby scrambled to her feet and backed away, her mind racing with terror as she searched for a way out. But no matter which direction she turned, the figure was there, its presence looming over her like a specter from the grave. With a surge of adrenaline, Shelby made a run for the door, her heart pounding in her chest as she reached for the handle. But just as her fingers closed around it, the lights flickered and died, plunging the office into darkness. With a scream, Shelby stumbled backwards, her heart racing with fear as she realized that she was trapped in the darkness with whatever lurked in the shadows. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure was up on her, its icy fingers wrapping around her throat with a strength that defied logic. As darkness closed in around her, Shelby's mind was filled with visions of unspeakable horrors, twisted faces and gnarled hands reaching out from the depths of her nightmares. And then, with a sudden rush of wind, everything went black, and Shelby knew no more. The next morning, when Shelby failed to return home, her colleagues grew concerned and alerted the authorities. But despite their best efforts, no trace of her was ever found. She had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread and the haunting memory of the shadows in the office.